This is Savvy Wisdom,
the heart-to-heart podcast you didn't know you needed.
Hosted by Dr. Tamika Sanders and Cheyennis Doom. Savvy Wisdom is a monthly interactive podcast for women who value their well-being and growth that highlights the unique challenges women face daily.
We talk about the relevant issues, their impact to our well-being, share expert insights, best practices, and provide resources and support for your journey right along with you. Dr. Tamika Sanders has 20 years of experience working with schools and businesses in the areas of training and development, public programming, and leadership development. Her work revolves around bringing a diversity of real-world perspectives into programming initiatives and creating strategic community partnerships that can generate revenue and provide access to resources and opportunities for marginalized groups.
Cheyennis Doom is a multi-talented Cali creative with 20 plus years of extensive banking experience, with a proven track record for driving transformative change and fostering a culture of excellence through process improvement, DEI, strategy planning, and program management. She is also an entrepreneur and focused on intentional well-being, with multiple offerings that allow her clients to connect, learn, inspire, and grow. Hello, welcome back, everyone. Thank you all again for joining us for our second episode. We're going to be talking about support systems. Whoop, whoop. But before we get into it, we really just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has watched the first episode, that shared it. We have been getting the most amazing feedback, and we couldn't get that without you. So we wanted to just start off and share some of the feedback that we've actually been hearing, and again to say thank you for tuning in.
So we got finally some positive content I can relate to. Great show, ladies. I'm going to start a podcast group at work, like a book club, but with each episode you put out, this is something regardless of where those of us who identify as women are in life and career need to hear and discuss. Hey there, just finished your initial podcast. Great content and first episode. Congrats. It's just been so fulfilling to see again just the response to this this gift of love. I say labor of love, but I'm going to call it a gift of love from us to you. So thank you. You know, it's been a wild ride. It's been a few weeks since that episode, and we've been learning so much about ourselves. How has life been for you since dropping that first episode, Tamika?
You know, it's been just like you said, people reaching out left to right to just say thank you and offering just gratitude. But then also for me, because my husband got to listen to it too, just looking at it and going, you know what, how can just him leaning in, other people leaning in, and you know what, how can I help? You know, how can I help you so that you're not feeling like you're doing it all or you're being that superwoman, and that, you know, I'm also getting to maintain that 70-30 percentage that I told you all that I have. And so he'll just check in with me and be like, how's it going? You still got your 70-30? And, you know, if not, let me know where I can help in. So I am appreciative of him for that.
That is
What
so
about you?
awesome.
How's it going for you?
Yes. So of course my two intentions were to let go of perfectionism as well as ask for help. Now I'm going to be really transparent here. And for those of you who follow me on Instagram, you know, and you gave me this wonderful pep talk, Tamika, on letting go of perfectionism. And instead of taking me out of Superwoman syndrome mode, though, it ended up unlocking, you know, my sage innovate powers. And so like all of these creative blocks that I'd been previously having, like all of a sudden they were just removed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can create this. I could do that. I can learn this. I can do that. And again, for those of you who've seen some, you know, my stories, like it was definitely taking me down a path where I realized, you know what, we got to get this back into check, because I was finding that my sleep was getting even worse because I was just like so excited about all the different things, and the bags were bagging. The bags were bagging. So I was like, okay, hold up. Okay, I'm glad that we were able to like uncover and unlock some things, but we got to scale it back. So and I did, and I'm feeling much more balanced, and I'm also realizing like chill chill. Things are not going to happen overnight. No one is expecting anything to happen overnight. So that's something that I've been having to like remind myself of. And then in terms of getting help, I have been trying out different tools like, what you suggested. So I got my subscription to my finally got my subscription to Calendly. I was trying out the Notion app on how to automate tasks and use it as a personal CRM. But just so much has happened. Just so much has happened since then. And I've just been really just making sure that I check myself because it's already it's February and we cannot continue the year in superwoman mode. So yeah.
Right. Yes. And we've gotten feedback from all of you the same thing. That you're using some of the tips, so I'm glad that they helped. And you're also using each other, which brings us to our episode today about support systems,
Yes.
right? Being a superwoman, one of the reasons why we feel like we have to be in this superwoman syndrome is because we don't have the support. And so we want to talk about that a little bit today, talking about some healthy support systems, give you some tips, but also show you some unhealthy support systems and what that looks like so that you can kick those out this new year and start anew with some really great ones and then sustaining the ones you have. So let's kick it off. Do we want to share our definition? Definitions are important, right? What we name things is important. So here's our definition of what we think that what we're going to be using when we talk about support systems, how we define it.
Yes, which is a network of people who provide an individual with practical or emotional support. And, in doing our research, of course, we learned, and I love learning about different types of things. And so there are 4 types of social support, and it may vary depending on, where you get your information from. But the main ones are emotional support, esteem support, informational support, and tangible support. And, Tamika, why don't you kick it off on what healthy emotional support looks like?
Yeah. So emotional support it could come from family, friends, coworkers, but it could be, listening if someone's telling you they had a bad day. It's kind of leaning in there and giving them a hug saying, I've got you. I'm here for you, sis. Or it's my husband does this really well, leaning in and just kind of saying, what do you need? Or sometimes it's very simple. I'm working and he'll just come behind my shoulders and give me this really great shoulder
Oh,
massage, kiss me on the cheek and be like, go, keep it up, so it's being there for people and letting them know that they can come to you emotionally, but you can also come to them. What is the other one for you? There's more.
yeah. So esteem support is definitely my favorite. Like that has been the one that I would say has been just so instrumental for me during this stage in my life. So providing affirmations and boosting someone's confidence, you know, um, being somebody's cheerleader, being someone's hype person. And I've been so thankful and so fortunate. I would say it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. You have been, just an amazing source of all the types of support, to be honest. But I've also been just really fortunate to have, the esteemed support from the Multicultural Women's Executive Leadership Program that I recently graduated um, from all of the wonderful women and individuals that I met at our last company. And I know that I'm forgetting some people here. So just know that don't take it personally, but I have been just receiving the esteemed support that's been helping me to really put myself out there more than I had been before. So, now what about for you in terms of informational or tangible support? Like which ones are sticking out to you in terms of like what you've been kind of having lately?
Information is really good. There's so much information, right? It could be telling someone, sharing an invitation to an event or a conference or a women's circle, that you can go to. And it's even referrals. It's sharing
Yeah.
referrals. Like I've gotten people reaching out to say, great job doing these speaking events. you know what, here's some information on another conference, go and submit, they're accepting
Wow.
speakers, right? Just sharing that information with folks, that's another really good way to find support, because in sharing the information, you're not telling them that you're doing it for them, but you're giving them something that they might not have otherwise known about, whether it's a tip or it's advice. But it's
Yes.
really important to share those things when you have them. What about
Ooh.
you, try with tangible? Because tangible is important, right? We can talk about it, feel it, but the doing is important. So how does that feel for you?
The doing is definitely important. So I've been receiving tangible support in the way of um actually being hired for, my digital media abilities, and that has been so exciting because it gives me a chance to connect in a way that I hadn't before. Um and I'll say, like, it hits different. It hits different when you are helping someone with an important presentation for an important event versus, doing a presentation that you're going to be giving like in your role. No tea, no shade with any of that, but it definitely hits different because it's like I'm making that human, connection. It's also in the way of purchasing from my jewelry business, which I have been, re-energized in, and it's in the way of, following social media, liking, commenting, on our podcast so that, you can boost our visibility and boost our reach so that we can continue to build, these healthy support systems. It's also inviting people into spaces that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. Again, I go back to Afrotech, and just I will never forget, how you and one of our other wonderful savvy sisters came through on making Afrotech a reality for me this past November. So shout out to Candace. But yeah, so that's what it's looked like for me, for sure.
Out of all of those, when you think about, is there one of those out of emotional, tangible, informational, and emotion, any of those that if you could only have one of them,
Oh
which one do you
gosh.
think feels the most special to you?
Oh, honestly, I would say emotional support. And the reason I say this is because there's one aspect of it. So being physically present with someone. And
Mhm.
and I've just learned this term. So as an unpartnered person, um, I find myself as an unpartnered person of a certain age. I find that I'm constantly, I wouldn't say in competition, but I would definitely say I'm going to be at closer to the bottom of the list for people when it comes to their responsibilities, whether it be family, their own families that they are caring for and all that kind of stuff. So I totally, totally get that. So when someone is actually physically present with me, that is like the greatest gift ever. And that's something that, again, that's also something that you provided to me. I know, a couple weeks ago we were talking, and I wasn't even expecting for us to have the conversation as long, as we did. And I'm just always so grateful because I know how busy you are. But you were there, like you were being supportive, you were being understanding to what it was that I was talking about. And that just meant so much to me. It meant so much to me. I don't want to cry, but
No, no. I'm so glad that you have it. You're right.
yeah.
Emotion is important. And I think that would, if I could pick two of those, emotion would be my second. But it would definitely be that tangible, because I'm so, as much as I love the words, I am all about the action. Like, I
Yes.
don't really believe you until you put it into action, until you do it. You could say you love me, you care about me,
Yeah.
you're my friend, but until you show me, I'm not really going to believe you. And so that one really is a good one for me. And it takes special people to be able to actually in action show up and do
Yeah.
those things, because not everybody is able to. Sometimes people want to, but they just, there, it's not in them to do that. But then those other people that will literally just go out of their way and give you a hug, or go get
Yeah.
groceries for you, or say, you know what, you look really tired, you take the night off, I'll go watch the kids, or any of those things. Like,
Yeah.
those mean so much. Or they just grab you and pick up and say, you know what, we're gonna go to lunch today and it's on me. I haven't
That is
seen you forever.
literally my
You're going
favorite.
to catch up, right? The best part.
That is
And
the
so that is
best.
really, though, that tangible is going to be the support
That's the one that is the most important to me, but it's also hard too, because it's the one that it takes a little bit more effort.
It absolutely does take more effort to do that. And I know that so many of us are running on E or close to it. So, again, it is so meaningful when you are able to just give what it is that you do have. And that's also something that I definitely want to like reach out to our sister circle on, you know, what's some functionality or what are some real things that we can do to provide you that tangible support, recognizing that everyone doesn't necessarily have the luxury of time or money, um so that's something I'm definitely like excited about. But we know that and we also know that there are so many benefits of having healthy support. This podcast, the whole reason that this podcast even exists is because of healthy support systems. And now, I know it, and I started this in our last episode. Now, the root of most things is going to be racism, misogyny, and sexism. In this case, it actually was a good thing because, well, depends on how you look at it, but it was the summer of 2020, and for many of us, we were finding ourselves leaning into employee resource groups and employee resource networks, and so that's where I was able to find my virtual community in a time that we were in a pandemic. We were all being isolated. And that really was the starting point and the recognition of how critical safe spaces are. And then it also made me realize how much I lacked psychological safety in the spaces that I had been inhabiting. It's also where I learned how to moderate events and to do speaking, which has helped me with just even embarking on this journey. And then that led to day one of joining the company that I met you at, joining an employee resource network. And that's exactly what I met you through, was participating in those really critical events.
Yeah. No, you're right. The benefits of having a healthy support group, for me, it really goes back to, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. And
Yeah.
it allows me to delegate, to ask for help, to lean on
Yeah.
people when I'm not, and when I don't want to have my strong woman cape on. I just want to
Yeah.
relax and let somebody else take the reins. But it makes sure that I don't have to be in superwoman syndrome all the time, because I'm not the only one there to do the work. I can share the load, I can share the work, and I have a community of people to back me up,
Yeah.
and to celebrate with. Right, when you hit
Yes.
those milestones and those moments, I have people to cry with, I have people to celebrate with, and I have people pushing me to say, "Don't give up. You're almost there." Right. So
Yes.
that's the benefits of having it, is you're not alone.
Yes. And coming out of our comfort zones and finding that there really are people out there that are about you, that want to see you thrive, that want to see you win, that do care about and are vested in your well-being. Um, I have literally made lifelong friends that I've still never actually met in real life. But I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to make that trip when I get a chance. But just these friendships, these authentic connections, where we're literally bonding just over video chat, like that was life changing for me. Definitely life changing
Oh
for
yeah.
me. Um,
Oh yeah.
but we know that healthy support systems are not necessarily the easiest to come by. And we know that sometimes we fall into spaces where we are around people, but I don't know if we really recognize if the people that we are around are actually acting as supportive people, if they are the supportive people that we need. And so I think it's really important that we do talk about the signs that maybe you might need to find a new support system if these are the kinds of things that are happening. So, do you have some some examples
Yeah.
that like really resonate with you, where it's like that's the one right there?
Yeah. You know how they say that sometimes people are on your team, but they're on your team so that they can see they can keep track of how far you're going so that you can never get
Mm.
ahead of them. And if they
Ooh.
feel like you're getting ahead of them, they're going to try to put some roadblocks or negativity in your way to make you rethink or stop your progress, right? So that's a big one for me. If you see people that are always feeding into drama, or they're constantly criticizing you, or anytime that you bring up a joy or a win, they've got something negative or critical to say, they are probably not on team you. Why? Is because
Yeah.
if were, they would have nothing but thanks and applauses and praises for you. And if they're giving you suggestions or critiques, it's in a constructive way, not a deconstructive way. So watch out for those negativity naysayers and critics who always put themselves first in the conversation. What about you, Shy?
Yes. Definitely people centering themselves, which I know, that's kind of like I would say a common, human type of thing, because I know sometimes when we're trying to listen empathetically, you want to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but there's definitely some people that could, use some help in that area of, making your problems about them, where it's like you're sharing something that is, maybe a big deal to you, and somehow it's like being diminished, like, well, everybody deals with that, or well, at least it wasn't this bad, at least it wasn't like when and it's like, okay, that's not exactly helpful though. That's not exactly helpful. So I've definitely had my share of that, and I'm just so thankful that I've had um so many wonderful women who have come into my life that have demonstrated and shown for me what healthy support looks like, so that I could create more space for those interactions and those positive energy exchanges. um but yeah, the negativity, like, you know we do not have time for the negativity, the drama, the gossip, any of that this year. You are not going to find that over here at Savvy Wisdom.
Because life is too short for the negativity. It's too short, and
Yeah.
all negativity does is weigh you down. So, we all have those negative naysayers in our group. You know who they are. You need to find a way and to kind of limit your interactions with them, because sometimes you can't completely cut them out because they might be family, and you can't just completely cut them out, but you can limit your interactions with them so that that negativity does not wear on you, because we wish that positive energy kind of would wear off or kind of rub off on negative energy, but it doesn't. It's the opposite. The negative energy
Yes.
will, every single time, it will affect the positivity. And so you have to limit your time with those. But thinking about your support groups too, just because you have a good support group doesn't mean that you can keep it. You have to be able to maintain that relationship. And so we
Yes.
also want to give you some tips on those of you that are lucky enough to have a good support system. What are some things that you are doing to actually make sure that that relationship and that support
Yeah.
system is sustained? And then as you grow in your life, that support system also grows with you, so that it is feeding you and the other people that are part of that network. So that's really important.
Yes. And you got to, think about it as a plant. I'm always like seeds, always seeds of wisdom, of course. I really do, that really does resonate for me, because it's like where your focus grows, your energy grows, you got to water it. We are, what is it, 80%, 90% water? I'll correct
Mhm.
this later, but but that's, it's kind of the same thing with our support systems. Like, think about that as like your garden. So in order to help your garden grow, you've got to show it love. Robin S said, show me love. So you've got to show your appreciation, you've got to stay in touch, you've got to actually make yourself available, and you have to reciprocate that energy. Again, I know it is such a challenge because there's so many different responsibilities and things that are competing, for our time, but there are some really cool technical solutions out there that you can use to help remind you to check in if it's not the easiest thing for you to do. um,
Yeah.
we talked about asking for help, last month, but part of sustaining your support system is accepting
Mhm.
help. It's also opening communication. um and respecting needs and limits. I touched upon this a little bit on the making sure that people know that they haven't been volunteered into this role, right? Because that again, that's not necessarily going to be helpful if you're tapping on somebody who was completely tapped out. And then you also have to be able to recognize and know when it isn't working, and don't take it personal.
One of the really good things, I've been really, really blessed to have really, really great friends in my circle. And I read this article a long time ago that said that after maybe like after 30, a lot of people, you don't really start making new friends, right? You kind of
Mm-hmm.
stick to those old childhood relationships, from either school or college, or just those. And the people that after 30 you meet that really are more like colleagues, but they're not necessarily those deep friendships where you share secrets, and you because you've already
Yeah.
you're past that point of your life where you're creating those new really deep meaningful relationships, and you don't want to have to explain all of the stuff that came before in your
Yeah.
past growing up, and the inside jokes that you and your friends may have.
Yeah.
But when you do find friends over that age, it's usually because either some very sometimes it's traumatic, or just some kind of special event happens. It could be a
Yeah.
death, it could be a birth, it could be a wedding, but something really transformational happens in your life. And those people that are there in your life at that time become that. But usually, if
Yes.
we don't have those things after 30, we're not making new friends. And I'm I am in the 40/40 club. I may not look it, but I am here and very proud of it. I didn't meet the support network of friends that I have until just a few years ago. And these ladies, when I tell you, they are the best. But the way that we sustain our relationships is we go on trips together. We do lunches and brunching. Next week,
Yes.
we're gonna for Valentine's, we're gonna do Galentine's, day
Yay.
that can come out. We do movies together, but we try to make sure that we are staying connected. And sometimes it's just a text message. We have a group
Yeah.
chat where we send each other motivational videos and chats and
Yes.
check in or share events. But it's you have to water those relationships, because if you don't, you could very easily lose them, or they just become not as functional as they could be
Yeah.
because you've outgrown each other, and you never really took the time to check in and make sure that those relationships and those people still know that you're there. So then when you do reach out, it doesn't feel like you're every time that they hear you, it's because you need something, right? It's a genuine
Girl.
relationship, and you don't want that because they'll stop answering the call if they feel that way, because no one wants to be needed in that way, like, oh, you only call me when you need something. No, I'm calling just to check in or to take you to lunch
Yeah.
or see how your year has been. So make sure that you water those relationships and those support networks if you really want to keep them sustained.
And I'm going to be transparent and honest here, because as you were talking about that, I know I need to take ownership on, maybe why some of my support systems aren't where I would need them to be. And it's because, there were certain things that I just didn't necessarily understand. And I also know that grow up without when you grow up without real examples of healthy um, emotional management, when you grow up without a lack of again, proper representation of what it looks like to have sustained support systems where you don't have those toxic behaviors that we were talking about, it does make it a little bit more challenging for you to then show up the way you need to show up in the world. And so, I'm in the 40 club too as well. I may not look it, but and it did take me, to this big age to realize the part that I played in that, but also giving myself the grace of granting myself the grace of, hey, you weren't necessarily equipped with some of these social tools that others may have been equipped with. But again, once we know better, we need to do better, right? And so
That's right.
that's why I'm like really, really protective of these new friendships and support systems that I have actually cultivated over the last few years, because I don't know how I would have gotten through some of these traumatic events without them.
Oh, that's such a good point because you're right, Shai. Me and you have talked about this. I didn't
Yeah.
grow up with the best support networks family wise, right? Because your family is
Yeah.
supposed to be your first kind of support network
Yeah.
where you go to for love and advice, but not
Yeah.
all of us have really great family networks. Sometimes that's our
Yeah.
most toxic relationships are those
Yeah.
families. And so I too had to, that's probably why it took me until in my 40s to
Yeah.
really get some really good friends because I had to grow up. I had to do that work. I had to
Yes.
learn. I knew what I didn't want, but I also had to be what I did want in a friend, in
Yes.
a network. And it took time to learn that because I didn't grow up with it. I had to find out what it was. I had to create that network. And then I
Yeah.
had to be what I was expecting others to be so that,
Yeah.
I wasn't being hypocritical. And so that took a lot of time. And so if you're in that boat, do not feel bad because it does take time
It
to be a good
does.
friend, be a good support system. But if it's worth it, you will take the time to learn and you will
Yeah.
take the time to find those people and cherish those relationships and kind of build them so that they can be what they need to be for both people or all the people involved.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I feel like this definitely is a great segue into the tips for finding your people. So it really starts with knowing what you want. And I really like that it starts there because, again, that's probably may have been the biggest frustration that people have had, with me and with people who haven't done the work is like, what does this woman need? What does she want? How am I supposed to show up for her if she doesn't even know what it is that she wants, right? You've got to understand also, we talked about the different types of social support, and you need to understand where you are in your journey and which one of those is most critical for the point that you're in your life. But there are some other tangible ways, once you figured out what it is that you want, there are an abundance of networks that you can find. You can start by volunteering for an organization that just aligns to something that is meaningful to you or that you're passionate about. Now, this is my favorite one. So you could also join a fitness studio. And I call it a fitness studio because, I do pole fitness, and shout out to Vertical Fitness. Oh my gosh. Just shout out to Tiffany and shout out to Kelly and all the wonderful people from Vertical Fitness Studio, because I moved up here a few years ago to Northern California, and this studio, from the moment I walked in, and I'll probably put it up, but from the moment I walked in, there was a sign: in this house everyone is a human being, Black Lives Matter, all of the different things. So I was like, okay, great, we already set the tone that this is going to be a safe space for me. We're not going to have no shenanigans. We are not going to have no shenanigans. We're not going to have a problem here. And that is literally what the experience has been. The group of people that come to this studio, we show up for each other. We give that esteem support, that emotional support. We do activities together. When people need help, they come through. People experience hardships, and everyone rallies around, and it is just the most beautiful space. But there's some other ways that you can find support systems, and I don't want to take up all the all of the joy here.
Oh my gosh, I love those, the ones that you said though. I think those are great. Because I'm kind of like a poet and an activist, I also, I find that if I go to things that I enjoy doing, so if I'm going to an open mic to hear poets or musicians or whatever, I'm probably going to be more likely to find people with the same likes that I do if I'm in an event like that. If I'm going to, you know, versus if I'm going to like a club or a bar or, even like an art gallery where people aren't necessarily there to kind of talk, but I'm going to this thing where people are there to enjoy the creativity and the environment, and they're going to talk and they're going to, mingle and things like that. So that helps. find the things that you love. I also sit on a number of nonprofit boards but they're for things that I love doing. I have one, Phonetic Spit, which is about, youth in arts and education and teaching other young people how to use their voice. I sit on the board of the Arizona Humanities Councils, which we give lots of grants and funding to people and organizations that are putting humanities type of programming out there to make us better, right? As human beings, to tell our story and all the wonderful ways there are to tell it. But yeah, go to do the things that you love. But also, as you're doing those things you love and you're around those people, be intentional about looking around you to
Yeah.
see, making friends, talking to people, and not just what we say, that surface level conversation, like how's the
Yeah.
weather, how was the week, but really asking them, wow, what made you come to this? What about this event do you really love? What other events are you going to that are maybe similar? Because then you can start talking, and then they may tell you about an event that they're going to go to, and then next thing you know, you are going to that event together.
Yeah.
Or hey, you know what, I would love, you like them a little bit more, you want to get to know them, you know what, let's do coffee or lunch sometime together and just get to know each other. Don't be afraid to be in those spaces with people and actually ask. You have to be able to ask for the things you want. And if you want those relationships and you're in those spaces, make sure that you ask, because otherwise those amazing people will just pass you by, and they're sitting there and those opportunities are there, and you'll never get to tap into them because you never opened your mouth. So make sure
Ooh,
that you do
yes.
that. Yeah, look for people at the places and the things that you love doing, and there you go. You're gonna find a lot there. Mhm.
And if you don't, if that isn't readily available to you, one of the easiest things you can do if you haven't already, and if you work for, a company that does have one, join an employee resource group, join an employee resource network, regardless of how you identify. I joined every single one. I know that um, I identify with multiple of them, but I said, you know what? I'm going to join all of them because I want to know. And I also want to know how I can be an ally. You could also join our sister circle as well. You could
Of
also
course.
join our sister circle, and then you can use online resources. There's an abundance of information out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's Lean In is a really great one, and it's you can do kind of circles where you get to meet other like-minded women, and you lead circles to talk about different things. You have one that me and Shy got introduced to
Yes.
recently called Entreprenista, and it's all women, just entrepreneurs,
Oh,
and when I
yes.
say the energy in those rooms and the support system is real, that's another really great one. Some of these groups are paid, some of them are not paid, but
Yes.
find what works for you. If you don't have, if you're like what do you call yourself now? That word.
Oh, unpartnered. And
Unpartnered, right? You're unpartnered, you're new to a city, whatever that may be, and you may not have physical people around you, join a virtual one. And then you
yeah.
can start finding those connections where you can. And then you might end up find some of the in-person connections that you have from those virtual groups where you can kind of get that in-person kind of contact that you need to. But don't feel, I've got friends that have, either they're the only child and many of the folks have passed away, or
Yeah.
they are in a new city and their family is in a whole nother city, so they're
Yeah.
starting over, they're newly divorced, or again they're starting over, and they don't have the relationships, in-person relationships that they have, so
Yeah.
they're trying to recreate those. So use some of the online virtual networks that are really a great asset. It could be a kind of a jumping off spot for you, as well as those employee resource groups, because there are people that you work with, but in those groups, me and Shai have found that you do a lot more than just share your work. You share your person. You share the reasons
Yes.
that inspired you to join those resource groups, and you find a lot of commonalities there that, I mean, created
Absolutely.
lifelong friends, right? There's people
Literally.
in those groups that we don't work in the companies all together anymore, but we still, those friendships are going to be lifelong. And so
Yes.
another great spot. Mhm.
Yes. And then that just reminded me that Meetup is a thing. I am not the best on I kind of forget that Meetup exists, but you can create your own Meetup. If that's not intimidating to you, or you can find one that involves like-minded people. You know, maybe that might be something that I set an intention for myself on. Either create a
Mhm.
meetup event or join a meetup event.
Ooh,
Ooh,
I love
yeah.
that for you. I want to hear all about it. I think it's going to be great. I absolutely love it. And I think for me, my intentions, because I have some really great relationships, is just making sure that I continue to sustain them, and that the ones that I have that maybe I don't reach out as much, make the intention to make sure that I am also cultivating those ones, and I'm not taking them for granted that they'll always be there.
Yes, and I'm definitely going to be leaning on technology to help me with that, because I swear, Tamika, if I actually really could give, like, I wish I could do an entire episode on all of the specific people who've shown up in my life, and have been supportive. Like, we could do a whole episode on that. But with that comes great responsibility of the frequency of check-ins. And again, there are apps and there are tools that exist where you can set the parameters on, hey, on how often a check-in, may be healthy for, for that situation. Also, make sure for those who are really, really going through it, like, they're going to need some extra hand holding. And so if you've got the capacity for that, it really goes a long way to, like, kind of amp up the reach outs. And people remember that. It's not about, it's like, what is it? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I know that's a very basic saying, but there's so much
That's very
truth in
true.
that. Yeah.
It is. And the good thing is that you're not alone in this. We've got some resources that we'll share as well in our sister circle. So if you're part of that, make sure.
Yes.
I'm sure I did an amazing job of just putting together some tangible things that you can do, questions you can
Yeah.
ask yourself, so that you can be aware of what's going on and build the support network you need. But also, if you're part of our sister circle, you're going to have that support there of being
Yeah.
able to reach out as we grow and do more events and offer workshops and training and things like that for you to take up to
Yes.
be a part of. So, but yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm so glad that we got to do this episode. And again, there's just a million and one ways, million and one directions that we could have taken this, but I feel like it definitely does set the tone and lay the foundation for the rest of this year, because
Mhm.
again, we are absolutely going to need each other.
And I love that self care in March. When you think about March, some people use March as their actual new year because it's spring. It's when things are waking up. It's when things
Ooh.
come alive again. So it makes sense that if that's what we're doing, if nature is doing that, that's when we should also be taking that time
Ooh.
to learn and love and reintroduce ourselves to ourselves. So we're so
Yes.
excited for you to join us for that episode to talk about some of those tips. And thank you again for joining us today and
Yes.
sharing and liking. We couldn't do this
Yay.
without you, and we do it for you. So thank you, and we look forward to next time with you.
Yes. Bye.
Here's how to connect with me for any of your business or educational consulting needs.
Here's how to connect with me for any of your business and individual needs.
We hope you connect with us on Facebook and Instagram.
Next time on Savvy Wisdom, we'll be getting into self-care and self-love. But we aren't just talking about bubble baths and massages, although we do enjoy them. We'll be getting into the dimensions of well-being and honoring ourselves by establishing what's needed to create balance and happiness, how to love and accept yourself fully, treat yourself with kindness and respect, and nurture your growth and well-being.